Wherever you're comfortable.
Whatever.
Okay, July 28th, 9 a.m., Finance Committee Budget Hearing. Call the meeting to order, or sorry, we'll do the roll call.
Alt.
Here.
Bowers.
Yes.
Curtis.
Yes.
Hughes.
Yes.
Young.
Yes.
McTaggart.
Yes. Call the meeting to order. We have a motion to approve the agenda. We have a second. Mr. Bowers. Okay, we have amendment to add, I'd like to make an amendment to add a discussion to the amendment to the agenda to have a discussion about the county recycling event. We have a second. Okay. And we have to voice. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Amendment carries. We have a motion to approve the agenda with that amendment, or I think we need to take a voice vote on to approve the agenda then. All in favor? Aye. Okay, the amended agenda is approved. We'll do that right after public comments. I don't think we have any, so you want to talk about that right now?
Yesterday afternoon, I got a telephone call from Mark Garfield about the annual recycling event. He wants to know if the county wants to participate in that again this year. He's wanting to do it on September 11th, 9/11. He's also asking if we could do it here, using the parking lot around our building. I believe we have money in the budget to pay our part of that for this year. So we would need a motion to do that. As far as the other part about using the administrative parking lot here, I probably am not in favor of doing that. I think that even on a Saturday, there's enough activity around here that would interfere with plus the wear and tear on the parking lot. I think probably we might not want to okay of doing that, so.
Or does he do it usually over at Stock and Field?
Yes, and if you've ever participated in that over there, you know there's a huge number of people that come, and I think that's part of the reason he wants to move out of there, but you have all those people coming around here, the streets out in front of here are gonna be clogged up and whatnot, but I know the 911 telecommunicators need to get in and out when they change shifts. I know there's times when the different police departments have to come in and have business to transact there as well. So I just don't think that blocking this off is a good idea.
Okay,
I told Mark that I would get back to him as soon as possible. That's why I thought this morning if we could.
So that cost 50/50 with what's in the county?
Right.
8,000. Last year the payment was 6,600.
How much?
Our portion last year was 6,600. And we have 8,000 budgeted for this year.
Did he give you an idea of the cost?
He didn't say. I don't think they'll know until it's over with.
Based on the weight.
How much
Yeah, it's
material
also
they
for
generate.
computers and
That's
stuff
about
like that.
what it's based on.
I think they'd want them in front of their retail stores so they'd walk in and buy some.
yes, Don?
Mike, you might remind the committee that those funds come out of the money that was left from the sale of the recycling center.
Yeah.
And that's not that's not out of the general fund.
Right.
So,
Correct.
because those funds are limited as to how we can spend them.
Yeah, we have to spend them on this type of stuff, and it's already in the budget, so it's
Yeah.
more of a, just saying, yes, we're gonna do it. So I'll make a motion that we agree to go forth with the September 11th recycling event,
Second.
but we do not want to host it here at the administrative building. Charlie seconded it. We have to do a voice number.
If you want to get everybody's, to see if they want to host or not, you can do a roll call. Or you can do a voice. Let's do a roll call.
Alt.
Yes.
Bowers.
Yes.
Curtis. Hughes.
Yes.
Young.
Yes.
McTaggart.
Yes. Okay, motion carries.
That's all I need.
If John can go communicate back to them, then we'll do it. So, all right, and I think that's that. We'll move on to the budget hearings, and Judge Sable, you are first.
All right. I think for the most part, everything is pretty straightforward. Other than, let's see, the special attorney hire is significantly more I would expect this next coming year. I had to appoint private counsel to represent a defendant who's charged with first-degree murder, so that's why that number is significantly higher, and he's being paid at $100 an hour. That was somebody that the public defenders could not represent. Other than that, I think it's pretty straightforward, and there's nothing that's pretty consistent with what the budget has been in the past.
Okay.
I'm happy to answer any questions if anybody has any.
No, I think we're good on that. And the next one we had was the jurors. It looks like it's the same as the 2020,
Right.
2021 budget.
It's always difficult to predict, but I think that should, I don't expect to be any higher than that. We're gonna have 8 two-week jury terms for next year,
Very
which is
good.
what we've been doing for the past several years. It seems that seems to be working pretty well.
Okay. And the next one we had was the law library.
Right.
Which looks to be the same with this year.
Yes.
I guess unless someone else has a question for the judge. It looks
All right.
pretty easy. So
Okay.
appreciate you coming in. Thank you.
Have a good day.
Yeah. We'll go on to the coroner, Mr. Cheatham. You have yours sitting here?
Yes, and as you can see, I don't see any changes. You know, the autopsy line item this year has, at first I thought we were gonna save a lot, but we've had 4 autopsies here in the last month, bam, bam. So, but it just seems like a lot of our car accidents, a lot of our trauma stuff has been with Riverside Ambulance here. They've been taking stuff up to Kankakee, so this year I see that has gone down. I hope next year maybe, you know, you just can't judge on 1 year, but maybe next year will be the same, so maybe our trauma cases are going up to Kankakee, so maybe our autopsy line item will go down.
Okay.
So
Is Kankakee gonna complain about that?
they already have. They want me to buy them a new x-ray machine with our leftover money.
Yeah, but as I understand, when Riverside picks them up, they don't really give them an option unless the patient or whatever says, hey, I want this to go
Right.
here.
Right, we just had an accident, a motorcycle accident up by Donovan, and the young man probably shouldn't, I'm not saying they shouldn't been, they should not have been taken, but they did get taken to Kankakee, and that's where he's pronounced, so. But it's just the way they do things.
Is there any kind of a legal requirement that they ask the patient where they want to be taken?
If they can, you know, talk, and if they're coherent, yeah, they can say, I'd like to be taken to IMH, or then if, you know, Riverside, the paramedics say, I recommend maybe we need to get to a trauma center, we need to go to Riverside, then, you know. So, but most of the time, if they want to go to IMH, yes, they will take them to IMH.
But they have to ask the patient.
Right, they do. And if they don't have a preference, they're probably always going to Kankakee, since that's their home base, so.
Well, I guess, good information to know, but looks probably like you got enough money in the budget to cover things that you need, so.
I do, yeah. Really good.
And the automation fund was what we had next.
Yeah, the automation fund, that's been picking up some salary on some part-time people, covering a day or here or there if I'm leaving Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday of next week to go to continuing ed, so, I've got two guys that, they cover, and I pay them out of the automation fund when they cover. They don't necessarily cover every month, so the automation fund has been a godsend to the coroner's office as far as covering up or taking care of our expenses, so, yep.
Okay. And the grants, is what we had next. That's kind of an in and out thing.
Yeah, that's a in and out thing. I don't spend it just to spend it. I want to wait till we need something major in the coroner's office. I waited about 4 years to spend it before we got our van. So right now I've got a few things in mind but nothing coming up here in the near future as far as, so anyway, I'll just let that sit there if you guys don't mind.
Yep. Is it? It shows that there was the 4,000, basically that the numbers were flat with 2021 budget, but I guess, are you, so it's showing that we have $4,400 being spent there this year, is that, or for 2022? So you are
That is for this year, is for?
well, there's, in the 2021 budget, it was $4,400,
Okay.
and then, which it looks like nothing as of the end of June had been spent or whatever. But
Right.
then it's the same number in 2022.
Right.
I don't know that it really
I think it's
matters.
just a placeholder in
It's
case
just a placeholder,
something
yeah.
does,
It all nets
or that
to
he
zero,
needs
so
to-
it,
yeah. In case he needs to spend it, so.
that's fine. Okay. No big deal. All right, very good. Thank you, Bill.
Okay, thank you.
Unless someone else has something for him. Okay.
See you, Bill.
I can see you guys later. Thank you.
Jim coming,
Supposed to be.
probably already ahead here.
Yeah, we are.
That's ahead.
And on there where it says JCC, Jennifer McTaggart, Jim's gonna discuss that. It's fully funded by a grant, so.
Well, is there anything else you got you could look at, Jill?
Yesterday, after the meeting here, I was in a meeting with Mayor Allhands, and he indicated that after Eric Raymond got through here, he called the mayor and talked to him about the city's contribution for the joint dispatch. And the mayor indicated to me, which I expected, that there was no way they could go to 191,000.
Right.
But he did seem to think that they might be able to go to the 120,000 that they were at a couple of years ago. So I just thought I'd pass that along. Obviously, that's city council decision, I guess, to amend their budget. He doesn't have a vote on that, so. But
Based on the history and what you were saying yesterday, it seems like somewhat reasonable to go back to that.
Well, I think it, I
At
think
least
it.
it goes back to kind of what the precedent was before.
I think it does set the stage though, maybe in the year following for another increase there. When you look back in, I think it's 2015, it was 160,000. So, I mean, there's a precedent for going higher than 120. Assuming that, well, we know the telephone surcharge is gonna stay in place for 2 years. So that money problem isn't gonna go away.
What, I know why or I guess I've been told why the joint dispatch exists. You know, it was Watsika had their own 911 at the time.
Right.
What are the requirements on providing, I mean, the state requirements on how we provide 911? I mean, is it per so many people, there has to be an agency, or there's a minimum requirement, or something like that, or I guess why did Watsika have their own 911 to begin with? I guess is what
They had their,
kind of trying to
they
get
had
to.
their own dispatch center way back in the day
Sure.
before 911.
Right.
Which really all of the towns did. You know, back in the day, if you lived in, say, Monarga and you had some problem at your house, you called the city
The
hall
number,
or wherever, and they'd send out, you know, whoever it was, the fire department, police, or whatever. So, you know, this was intended to consolidate everything. That's how 911 came about, which, in theory, it's a good idea.
Okay, and my next question, and I'm not saying they shouldn't, why do they pay such a disproportionately higher, I mean, like I said.
It'd be interesting to know what the call volume is for the city of
Well,
Watsika.
I guess that's what I was getting at, and I'm not trying to say that the county's paid more or whatever, but it just on the surface, as I guess not knowing the whole history and stuff, it looks like, I probably shouldn't say this out loud, but they pay a lot for compared to the other places. But maybe that's because they have a lot more volume. I don't know. It just,
Well, I
I mean,
guess.
per capita, they can't have that many more people.
I think you're asking a question that probably doesn't really have an answer.
Well, I know, yeah.
And I say that because, yes, you're right, when you examine the way the whole program is funded, there's no way to justify it.
Right.
It's
And I
something
guess
that I
along-
inherited it
Yeah,
as far
it's
as
been the
trying to
way it is.
administer it, and Amanda knows
The
from the
headaches.
conversations that she and I have had, the frustrations that exist with it, as well as the recognizing the inequities that exist. But I've also been open to say, if somebody has a better plan, I'd like to know what it is, so that if we have a better way of doing it, we can implement it.
Well, and I just wonder even, and I know it's gonna, at this point, would be like pulling teeth to change drastically anything, but, and I don't know how those were run. I remember on our phone as a kid having the Clifton number, that was the number you called if you needed a fire department or ambulance or whatever. And before 911, I still remember that because my parents put the little sticker on there, so it was there that you had the number. But the call, I guess if they had a full-time person sitting in Clifton or Cessna or whatever, or how did that work? Their cost had to be, if that were the case, which you're shaking your head no, so it must not have been, that cost would have been a lot more than each of these villages are paying now
Oh,
to
yeah.
have a human being sit there.
Yeah, they did about what Watsika did, I think.
So how did that work? It just went to somebody's house phone, or I guess what would an assistant
Or like on the
do
fire
back then?
department, for instance, they
Sure.
ran a fire phone system and everybody had a phone and that was on the fire department, your phone just rang steady.
Okay,
And then you just,
Okay.
first person picked it up.
gotcha.
That's how it was when you were involved, but if you go back even well beyond when you were involved, yes, there was somebody. Most of these villages, I can remember when I was
Well, they
a
used to have
young lad,
switchboard operators. They probably,
the village that I lived in, there was somebody there all the time.
Yeah.
It wasn't paid very much, but I mean, there was somebody there.
Well, I remember where I came from. The implement store
When I was a
had a
kid.
big red button, and the only thing that called the firemen, and we didn't have ambulances back then, was the siren. And they punched the button, and I don't know how they did it at night, quite honestly, but
No,
it was
that's,
a siren.
a lot of towns had that where they'd sound a siren and volunteers would come in, so.
They still do.
But somebody had to sound the siren.
What's going on now, they call roads over.
I think they.
All right, well then I take that back, because I was thinking, well, if they had someone, I guess I never knew that that's how it worked, but I was thinking, if they had someone sitting by the phone, I mean, what they're paying now to have somebody sit by the phone is a pittance by comparison, but I guess they didn't.
Yeah, but the thing that's interesting about all this, if I might add, is that it isn't the city of Watsika that's complaining about the
No, I
amount that they pay. It's the people that pay the least that complain the most. Like Gilman, for example, I don't wanna tell you all the names they
No, I
call
know.
me when I have to go
I
there
know.
personally and try and get the money from them, and they refuse to pay it. Crescent City is another example. They have an ambulance service in Crescent City. That ambulance service has contracts out at that rehab center out there. They're making money hand over fist responding to those calls, and yet they're complaining about the fact that they're being charged for 911. So, I mean,
Yeah.
it's very frustrating, to say the least, but if we could come up with a better plan of doing it, you know, these small outfits, they say, well, we pay property taxes, why do we have to pay this? And, you know, it's hard to find, you know, intelligent answers to come back to some of the questions that they raised, because I've just said, you know, really, it's an illogical system in many ways.
It is, yep. For sure.
The problem is that we get stuck with picking up the loose ends and paying by far the greatest amount of the whole thing.
What is the population of Watsika?
200 or so.
Yeah, it's probably, it might even be dipping under 5,000 when the census comes out.
What's Gilman like, for example? That's number 2, right?
1,500.
Not 1,800.
Yeah, none of it really makes sense, but
Well, and Gilman is without any law enforcement today. I mean, that's another problem, I think. How can a city of that size expect to exist for a long term without law enforcement?
they have the wonderful county of Iroquois backing them.
Yeah, sure, however long it takes them to get there when there's a call. You know, they're not patrolling the streets, and you know, whatever deterrent that provides, as well as assurance to the residents. What is the reason that there's a policeman in Milford? What's the reason there's a policeman in Cissna Park, or has been, or whatever? I mean, well, how do you justify that then? Why is there one in Buckley and Voda?
Yeah.
Woodland's getting theirs back.
Yeah,
I heard that.
well, you'll sit in the woods out there and catch people speeding.
Yeah.
Come by.
32.
Well,
Do you want me to do animal control while we wait?
sounds good.
I don't know what happened with Jim.
Animal
We don't
control,
want the last page?
Nope, nope,
Nope. Perfect timing.
I'm early, actually.
We're just early too, so.
I can sum it up in a nutshell.
I didn't even think of animal control.
Dr. Youssef has resigned effective this Friday. My suggestion is that we don't do anything with that until we can try and stabilize that whole approach, or that whole project, that whole area.
What are you talking about?
So,
What are you talking about, John?
Dr. Youssef, the animal control director, he's resigned.
Oh, really?
He's giving up his whole practice here in town. I believe he's moving to California. This Friday is his last day as the animal control director. So, in the meantime,
Don't tell the dogs, they're gonna be running wild now.
I've tried frantically
Nowhere
to
to take them.
see what we can do about this, and have some meetings scheduled this afternoon to try and get some further information and start getting some things put into some sense of organization on it, so. But my recommendation right now would be that we just leave that part of the budget alone for at least the next month and see where we're going with this thing before because we're gonna have to probably change a number of things around, so.
Paul's into trapping and stuff there. I think we could have him be here.
I could shoot a lot of.
Don't say that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You missed all the excitement a couple years ago.
Yes, yeah, that was.
The problem is not with catching dogs or any of that. We have animal wardens that are staying on as far as we know, and they appear to be doing a satisfactory job. The problem is finding a veterinarian to fulfill the requirements of the law as far as euthanizing animals, as far as any of the other activities that are associated with that position, such as even purchasing the dog tags. We cannot purchase the dog tags ourselves, only the vet can do that. So we need somebody in that spot to help us out. There's only 2 other vets currently in the county, and one of them is probably not worthy of consideration. The other one I've been talking to. I'll tell you more about that as time goes by.
Okay. Mr. Devine, you have up the 110-220 general fund state's attorney budget here.
So, you look at the forecast of 2021, I'm going to be, forecast to be significantly under budget. That's primarily because I'm understaffed with a high-paying ASA that is open. So as you know, or maybe you don't know, so I had hired an ASA January 15 of this year after 6 weeks of a vacancy into the new budget year. She was with me until the end of June, and then she took a job in Kankakee County with the state's attorney's office there. So hence I now have a vacancy again, and it takes a while to get these things filled. We are advertising on lawyer websites to get some applicants. I haven't heard of any yet, but we just started getting things published late last week, so it's attracting people to Iroquois County in a professional way is difficult. So I budgeted $51,000 in the ASA for the new ASA. I think that's still appropriate, maybe a little bit low, but because I noticed that Rock Island, I think they have a beginning ASA position at 57. I can't compete with that, but we're not a metropolitan area either. So I think 51 is appropriate for an entry-level position, so I'm not asking to have that changed. Alex is making 76, so a 2.5% raise for him would put him at roughly 79.5, I believe, which is fine as far as I'm concerned. And then you've got to deal with secretaries ultimately getting up to that $15 per hour level by 2025, which I think is one reason why you have one of my secretaries with a 4% increase. Right?
If they're under $13, they get a 14% increase. Or, I'm sorry, a 4% increase.
Right.
That's part of the AFSCME contract.
Yeah, part of
Is
the
it?
contract.
Okay. So, everything else appears to be roughly the same. Office expense, I think will be under budget or pretty close to it. Publications, we're moving our publications from a local publisher to a different town. I don't want to be specific, but anyway, it's going to be a lot cheaper. So that line item would be within budget this year and going forward. Education and dues expense is down this year, primarily because you're not paying for any CLEs. Because of COVID, we're not traveling to get continuing legal education. So we're doing it all online, and we're doing as much freebie stuff as we can, obviously to keep costs down. So that should be well under budget. Criminal prosecution, because of COVID, things were down, didn't have as many trials. That's starting to pick up. And as far as expensive trials go in regard to hiring experts, I don't see it yet. I do have one pending murder case, that's the Sheldon murder case, the Jensen case. And maybe, I don't know if Judge Sable talked about it at all, but the defense attorney is asking for his client, the defendant, to be examined psychiatrically to see if there's some temporary insanity. I don't think that will pan out to be anything we need to worry about, but in case it does, we're gonna need to hire an expert to counter that. So that would be the only potential expense out there that I can see from a criminal prosecution perspective that may cost us a couple $1,000. But I don't think that's gonna happen. I don't think Mr. Jensen is temporarily insane or has any psychiatric history. So I think we'll be okay. So really, it's mainly just raises that I'm after. Everything else looks to be the same.
Okay. The next one we had was teen court fund.
And
Looks the same as what you had it for this year.
yeah.
There's nothing on that one. Then we had
I have no,
drug addiction services fund, which
I don't really know what that is, to be honest with you.
either way, we got it the same as what it was
Yeah,
this year.
that's fine with me.
There
Not
we
asking
go.
for any more money.
There we go.
It was new a few years back.
Okay. And then drug mental health court, which
Looks good when we save it.
Sure.
looks
Not
like we got
spending
the
any
same numbers in again on the drug and mental health court as we did last year as well.
Yeah, that's again one of those mandatory
Yeah.
things that they create.
And then similarly, the child advocacy fund looks
Same idea.
same idea, as well as the automation state's attorney.
Right, that would be the only thing. If I was looking to buy computers and stuff, I'd probably be asking for something from that, but I'm not. So
Okay.
we're good to go.
Very good.
Yeah.
Then we're on to the drug-free communities fund. And it looks like we're getting revenue in there that we,
You know,
This is the JCC, this is Jennifer McTaggart.
oh, sorry.
Yeah.
So, and I'm gonna actually kind of handle that for her.
Mhm.
They don't work very much in the summertime. They basically take the summers off, but they're all grant-based.
Mhm.
Okay.
So it's all federal money that they get, and they live and die by that grant, which is a 6-year grant, I believe. Is it 5 years? Could go maybe 6, but, and yeah, you're right, it is 5 years to start with. So I just ask that they stay within their budget and stay within their grant. We're not giving them any more than what the government's giving them. So,
And I have to make the request for the revenue to come in. And then Jennifer turns around, it goes into their account, and then Jennifer has access to make claims, and they turn them in just like everybody else does.
And so what is she actually doing here? What's the?
The
I'm not on the
program?
judicial committee. You guys probably have talked about this, but I don't know that.
probably not very much. Technically, they're employees of the state's attorney's office. They, to get this grant, they had to be associated with one of us.
Mhm.
And so, talked to Greg Murphy, Dr. Murphy of ICANN, and he recommended that they associate with the state's attorney's office because of the teen court fund and our working with the probation department, which Jennifer and Sarah Pree work with. So Barb King is a big part of what they do and how they do things and kind of monitors how things go with them. But nonetheless, they're my employees, but they're my employees strictly through grant funds. So, you know, I really don't direct them to do what they do. I don't know what they do other than they work with a lot of school kids in Iroquois County with drug education programs.
They do a lot of the tip the scale advertising and all that you see.
Okay.
So, and they do a lot of advertising, and they go into schools and outreach programs and things like that. So that's what they do. I don't monitor them. They know what they're doing. They did it for 5 years with ICANN, but that grant ran out, and
Okay.
it changed, so they had to, so Murphy redid the grant where it could just be Iroquois County only and not Kankakee and Iroquois County. And again, he was looking for an agency to kind of take them in, which I
Sure.
did, and so I took in the grant, and they do their thing,
Yep,
so,
very good. Okay, well, I think that's all of them, so.
okay.
Very easy.
I know, that's what I wanna be.
Thanks, Stu.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
Oh, John's not gonna make it easy for me.
Even the state's attorney has to go to New York.
Right. The gals, they have an office in the basement over at the courthouse, and, yeah, they primarily work with school.
Okay.
So that's why they don't work during the summertime, but they have to work so many days within this grant, and I track that. So between Barb and I really oversee that.
And Barb usually gives a report during judicial,
Mhm.
lets us know what she's out there doing.
Okay. Does Ms. Dodds have a big request again this year?
Same as always.
Okay.
3% salary increase, and she just asked for an increase in office supply line. She's supposed to be here too.
Okay.
He messed up today and yesterday, so I'm all came out sick.
These ones, other than sheriff stuff's normally somewhat complicated, right?
Yeah.
The rest of these ones are normally pretty straightforward.
And I was in contact with Ginger, and she wanted to co-present.
Is the GPS under something else now? Is it zero?
What?
What?
What did you say, Charlie?
Is the GPS budget under something else now? Zero in this one.
Oh, for sheriff?
Sheriff's budget, yeah.
Yeah, last year it was discussed that it was gonna stay under probation.
Is what?
It was gonna be under probation.
I thought it went somewhere.
There's a note at the bottom of the sheet.
Oh,
Per
I'm sorry, I
Tom.
don't read the bottom.
That's all right, yeah. Per
Oh,
Tom,
geez, Charlie.
From sheriff to probation.
Go home and start over. And
I try to give you as much information as I can.
Oh, I'm overwhelmed.
Yeah, and he was backwards. It was 79 for Alex. 79.
And he might have to change his because he got,
Did you get notification?
July, his raise was effective July 1st. I don't remember if it was 2.5 or 3.5%. So you may have to update it. I'll take a look. I was gonna mention it, but I couldn't remember the 2.5 or 3.5 cost of living. So I don't know if he'll want this on top of his cost of living or if he'll just leave it as
What, for Alex?
no, for Jill.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And there's not much we can do. It's 3%.
Yeah. I think usually he just takes the state and with
Joe, what is a repeater? Since we have time.
It's a base station radio where all the other people with radios in their vehicles come back into a master radio that broadcasts the signal much further. So if a guy's in Martinton, comes into Watsika, and then it gets rebroadcast to a deputy, say for instance, is that low that you couldn't talk straight to him, it would rebroadcast it.
Oh, cool. Okay. That's good.
Jill,
Yes.
on this next one where, the public defender has a special attorney hire and it was in the judge's budget too,
Mm-hmm.
is that in there twice then, or?
No, she always has a line because I don't remember the reasoning. We'll have to ask her. But it's been there. It's been there. She's had that line for quite a while.
I mean, I understand when she has a conflict, the judge has to hire an attorney
Mm-hmm.
for someone, but I don't understand why she has a line.
Yeah, I'm not sure, we'll have to ask her for sure what that is for, and why the separation is between the courts and the public defender. Unless it's split, but I'm not sure, we'll have to ask.
Well, you know, we have that other attorney that gets paid $1,500 a month. And I can't remember, yeah, it goes through judicial, I can't remember what we call them. You know, Joe,
You know what,
the guy
yes,
died and now we've got a
yes,
new
we
one.
have, Alice Schilling, she's the special, she gets paid out of that line item.
Oh, she's there?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you. I forgot about Alice.
Now it makes sense. What's her name again?
Alice Schilling,
Else?
yeah, ELSE, Schilling, she's out of Kankakee. Yeah, that's how she explained it. Yeah, I forgot about her, I apologize. But the top line is Samantha, and then the assistant is Jennifer, and then the special attorney would be Alice.
Jennifer who?
Mansburg,
I don't think I know that.
She has her own practice on Cherry Street.
Mansford?
Mansberger and Burnett, on the corner of Cherry and Third.
I did have this switched around, I'm not sure, 9, but time-wise for some of these. Just kind of figure if was first.
What, are we waiting on somebody now?
I need earlier time.
Are we waiting on somebody?
Yeah, we're kind of ahead of schedule, Charlie, we're waiting on the public defender.
Public defender?
Yeah.
Oh, I remember those used to be fun.
What, the public defender?
Used to be Dale Stroud, I think.
Mm-hmm,
What?
Dale Stroud.
Yeah.
yeah, years ago. I had to have this, claims reimbursement for the chickens.
Who did Judge Sable,
Which-
the civil assistant?
Do you have any livestock that is killed by a dog?
Uh,
You can get
I'm not
reimbursed
sure.
every March.
Really,
who was?
without laws.
It's on the list.
No reason I remember Dale Stroud, his sister lives next door. And they got, between Dale and her, they got about.
Danielle Malazzo and Gilman.
What page is public
You want two
defender?
bets?
It's,
87.
She just opened up in Gilman, her and her husband are graduates of the University of
What?
Illinois
87.
Veterinary School. I got her contact information and spoke with her back in February and gave it to John because I had an inkling you said it was going to California.
Yeah, I thought there were more than just two.
No, just the two. And then a lot of people go to Catlin and Paxton.
Who's a public defender now?
Samantha Dodds.
Whitman's
What?
gonna be-
Samantha Dodds.
Okay.
But he's got somebody in there.
That's who we're waiting on.
Whitman and Piper City.
Anybody knock up by you?
I remember a name in front, I didn't look there.
No,
We're only one or two left in the county, and the Reddickers and Schlates, or, I think that's it.
Came out there by Pelota,
Mhm.
between System
Schlafly?
No, maybe they don't. Reddickers.
Actually, school, you mean?
Oh, maybe.
Going
I don't know if
forward,
they did, but I don't really know.
right, Paul? Going
My
forward,
brother's
if you're
working
not
for
here,
Redditor.
Oh, yeah.
we just slash it in half and
Yeah,
go
I know.
on forward.
That's it.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, he was
No livestock left in
pretty
the
busy
county.
there for a
other-
couple of weeks.
show
We had
cows.
to feed and everything.
Pigs,
Show
we
cows
got
and goats.
pigs, we got pigs in
Oh,
there.
yeah, fair enough.
They have the fire department, all the phones ring.
There are.
Yeah, 'cause we get the riot act if we don't walk very
They
far.
set his
still.
new phone off in the driveway the other day.
That's anyway, though.
Yeah.
He was really
Why
careful.
do you want to be like that?
Oh, I like it, really.
Oh, yeah, I knew you would.
That's why, you asked me why, yes,
It's gonna stay in the trunk.
we encourage it, that's why.
It's gonna stay in the trunk if you know how to operate it.
Should turn off the
You're
video
gonna
for
have to
15
here,
minutes.
fix this. She says, I got a
Guess we could.
flashlight on here.
What do I gotta do?
And I have
All
trouble.
right, I'm making a motion. Hey,
The other day
guys,
we're at the,
I'm making a motion that we have a 15-minute recess because she's not gonna be here till 10, so. Can I get a second? Joe seconds, all in favor? Aye.
So
We can turn off the
everybody
video here.
turned the flashlight on, went
Under
under.
scrutiny.
I just went like